Welcome to this week in Missouri Politics. Busy week in Missouri Politics. Far too busy to just have a featured guest. We have opinion maker the whole time. Rasheen Aldridge, City of St. Louis. Welcome back to the show.
Glad to be back, my friend.
Jane Dueker, attorney, Twitter. I think you're Mazer since he got like a real job is like not his Twitter account's not as great. You've kind of taken his space.
Well, lately.
Jane Dueker, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Mary Elizabeth Coleman, the Iron Lady of Jefferson County. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And Brett Dinkins, top Republican consultant. My goodness, you used to see Republicans and Democrats fight. Now that you won all the dadgum elections, you fight each other.
Yeah.
The governor was going to have a state of the state like they have every year since the Capitol was built. In the House chamber, normal stuff, and somehow the speaker managed to screw it up. What happened?
Well, look, at the end of the day, I think what we saw was Parson maintained his level head that he's been known for and stayed pretty well balanced, especially in his speech. When you look at what he talked about,
yeah.
I mean, he restored a calming voice to state government. That's been what he's known for his entire tenure in office. And I think overall, he handled that situation with as much grace as he could.
I thought it was the most interesting thing I found was you had Senator Schott, Senator Rowden, Representative Weeman, Representative Plocker, and the speaker put out a statement, and the four of them kind of did the wink of, okay, we know this isn't rational to distance more in a smaller room, but it was like so silly it told you what was really going on.
Well, the Senate is known for taking a little bit of an upper hand and maintaining a little bit more levity.
And I noticed all four of those legislators were present for the speech.
True.
Rasheen Aldridge, you've got to step back and like get you a couple hot dogs, something, and watch the fire, right? Watch the fire burn.
Man, I was sipping tea. I was just looking at it like, keep it coming, you know. And it was hilarious that, Speaker Vescovo had said, he didn't want the governor to come because it's a super spread. I'm like, every day we're in this chamber, it's a super spread.
Yeah, there's like 200 people there.
But yeah, I mean, just sitting back, sipping the tea and seeing, finally to have the other side kind of infight and the drama spill over on their side.
Jane Dueker, I worked in the Capitol when you were running the place as the governor's chief of staff. It wasn't really at that time, but I would hear the stories about how maybe 10 years before then, Democrats won all the elections, and they fought too, right?
Yeah, I mean, right before they lost the House and the Senate. Yeah, they did. And a little GOP on GOP crime is fun to watch. So I'm not going to stop that. But having worked for a governor, the whole idea of messing with the state of the state just bothers me. Like, I'm a big institutionalist, and we have these traditions, and I feel like if there was going to be some accommodation that they wanted to make, they should have done so a lot sooner. And I think that stability is important to show the citizens. And I think messing with that, I think it sort of degrades our whole sort of form of government. And that's when all the branches get together, and that should be sacred.
Sometimes people that are known for being a little paranoid, maybe a little volatile, they get in those offices and they kind of mature up to it. Maybe that's not quite happened in the speaker's office yet.
Well, term limits, I think, prevents the mentoring that needs to take place to get people maybe to that leadership level. Maybe people rise to leadership too fast before they're ready.
It's also a rough draw. You go from Todd Richardson, probably the greatest speaker the state's ever seen, then to Elijah Hart, very successful. You kind of, big shoes to fill, right?
Well, yeah, and it's hard. But the things that go outward is what people remember.
Yeah.
And that's, so if you're looking for a legacy of what you've done, I just think that was not what to pick, in my opinion.
That was interesting, though. I did see the leaders of your chamber, Floor Leader Plocker, the Minority Leader, Crystal Quaid, they all went to the speech and seemed to be able to find the chamber, right? So maybe it's a signal that maybe this is a temporary incompetence, paranoia cocktail, and it'll pass.
It seems to me like the most insider of insider baseball things. People know that there's a speech. They knew that it happened. They know one happens every year. I think if you polled Missourians, most people had no idea it happened in the House chamber, not the Senate chamber. And this is all about insider fighting. And nobody's paying attention except for those who are right there in the building. And at the end of the day, the governor laid out a really reasonable plan of making sure that we're moving forward out of this pandemic.
The governor did pull things out of the ditch.
He was a phenomenal speech, and I was really proud to see what direction we're going.
Jane Dueker, let's talk about something. I mean, you've said in these rooms, you know what it's like to be on the governor's staff when you have a serious problem. I mean, the budget crunch was a very serious thing you guys dealt with. Vaccine rollout is one of the most serious things I've seen state government have to tackle. Republicans don't have to care as much what the Post and the Star kind of throw at them with their statistics and things. But overall, I mean, this is a heck of a challenge. Mm-hmm. And thus far as they've taken it on, the tiered system seems to be working. There's going to be hiccups, but I mean, tell folks what goes into preparing something like that from the state level.
Oh, no, I mean, it's incredibly challenging. I mean, and it's, sleepless nights and endless amounts of time and energy. And I do think that the transparency with Mr. Nodell and the Director of Health going to the legislature and doing a hearing. That was absolutely necessary, and it was extremely helpful. I watched the whole hearing, and it was extremely helpful. So transparency, no matter what happens, there's going to be hiccups when you try to get 6 million people vaccinated. I mean, it's a Herculean task. And so I felt like when that transparency happened, it sort of, I thought it sort of turned a corner to say, look, guys, we're all in this together. Yeah. They were honest when they said, look, there were challenges at the federal government. They didn't defend Donald Trump's system blindly. I thought that they were the most honest they were with Missouri citizens about what's going on. It makes it a lot easier to understand the hiccups when you know what's behind and what's going on. I think we obviously can move faster. Everybody wants to move faster. I did appreciate that he said that if locals encourage line jumping, there's going to be consequences, because here in St. Louis, we were told on Tuesday that first responders aren't going to be finished being vaccinated for 18 days, and I come off the top rope on that. There's no excuse for that, none, and especially when other people who are far less, frankly, deserving, at-home office workers, people who've been working at home since March, getting vaccines over first responders is completely unacceptable.
I saw the cops had trouble getting vaccinated. That was a red flag to me.
It's still happening. And so, those kind of things, but I feel like he laid out with more clarity what the chain of command is going to be and what the process is going to be, and I think that helps people no matter what hiccups there are.
Look, I think if you're in the left wing, you can find things to pick apart here, no question. I mean, this is that big of an operation. There's going to be things you can point to. But as far as distributing the very limited amount of vaccines they have, it seems like it's went pretty well.
Yeah, and I think if you remember that just at the beginning of December, we were being mocked for saying that we would be having shots in arms at the end of the year. Sure. This is an incredible win for our healthcare professionals. They have worked around the clock, the scientists and the doctors, to develop a really impressive, not just one vaccine, but 3. And so we are seeing the fruits of this early effort come down. It's not fast enough. Everybody wants it faster. We need vaccine in Jefferson County. People are mad about it. I'm mad that we don't have more. But if we're not getting it from the federal government and we're not moving faster, there are those limitations. And so I want to commend the doctors in saying how fast this development has gotten to market. And we're seeing the rates continue to decline. They haven't been at this low since October. They're continuing to drop, and that's a success. So we're going to start to see that continue, and we'll see us moving more and more. I hate this back to normal. I don't appreciate a lot of the choices that were made through the pandemic, but the public health response is improving.
Rasheen Aldridge, there's one thing I've observed about you. You care about your community, your constituents. Your constituents right now, how would they get a vaccine?
One, I want to kind of backpedal a little bit, and also agree. This pandemic, of course, has struck us, and no one was ready for it. I think there has been a great response from the department of trying to get it out. However, the people in my community have not got the vaccine as quick as it's needed to be put in their arms. We still rank one of the lowest states of being able to put this vaccine in people's arms. There's no real process of trying to figure out how do they get the vaccine. The information, there needs to be a more information campaign on who to reach out to get the vaccine in their arm.
That would be my question. Is I think some people do reach out to you.
There's no targeting.
I don't even know if they reach out to you as a state rep. They reach out to you as a leader in your community.
I mean, I've been getting. As a state rep,
what do you tell them?
I've been getting texts, and I try to connect them to the. I just go straight to reach out to LIDA and say, hey, these are people in my ward that need to get the vaccine. Can you put them directly in contact with the public health department, especially if they're over that
Have you had
age
some
of
success
65.
with that?
Yeah, we were able to get actually a couple people when they had the vaccination shot venue last Saturday in there to be able to get vaccinated. But the rollout again is just. There's a lot that can be done to improve it. There's a lot.
There has to be a plan in St. Louis County for North County,
Yeah.
and we don't have it. And that's very distressing, because these are the people, a lot of the people are the frontline workers in other areas like food workers, and they have to be at work, and they have to be out in the public, and there's no plan. We have to target the people who are the most vulnerable, and that's the elderly.
That that community is being harder hit
Yes.
by the virus, and so
that should lead us to
It seems
that.
like we should be starting vaccination events in those communities.
I agree.
The statistics aren't covering something, though, and that's where they're being manipulated, and that's where all the bad press about Missouri came out. 334,000 of the vaccines are tied up in the federal program with CVS and Walgreens. That's half of what Missouri even has access to. The governor doesn't have the ability to go in and take those from them and start passing them out. When you look at the one state who has been held up as the champion of this effort, it's West Virginia, who was also the only state not to opt in to the federal program. At the time, it was because they didn't have that many Walgreens and CVS's, but it turned out to be the blessing they needed because they're the only state that has actually been able to use local pharmacies to get this out to the rural areas, the people who need it, the disenfranchised communities. And so what Missouri has done with the vaccines they actually have control over has been actually very successful. The problem is 50% of them more are tied up in a federal program. That's unacceptable. But the other thing West Virginia's done is single website for signups, and I think that is something that every state should be looking at. I know myself, I'm on several different hospital lists. I know a lot of my families are trying to get on different lists and government lists. I mean, that's kind of where the mess comes in, is trying to figure out the information, like the representative said, about where do you even go if you're a city of St. Louis citizen or wherever you are in the state. So I think the more we can unify that, where you're one sign up to get on this list and then you're getting notified and getting access to this, would be helpful to avoid the line jumping and things that's going on across the state.
And there was so much great information out there, how to get the test, the nose swabs. I mean, there was tests everywhere, but when it comes to the vaccine, it's like, where do I go, where do I turn left?
And I don't understand why we don't use the same model. I mean, we needed testing in the same areas with the same people. Why wouldn't the vaccines have followed the same path as testing?
Yeah.
I mean, they had a sort of a whole network set up. Why wouldn't you just access the same network? Why reinvent
Is it because they
the
don't
wheel?
have enough shots? Is that really what's coming down to?
No,
Yeah,
I
think that's
actually
it. We're
no.
not getting,
Scarcity.
we're not getting
There's
the
no
same
plan,
number.
and,
Yeah, there's no
and
plan.
there's no plan. That's the scary part.
Last
in
week,
my
a
opinion.
resident was able to go to a Phinia in the neighborhood because they put out a call and said, hey, we have shots and we don't want them to go bad. There's no plan. And
Well,
it's
what we know now is if you're watching the show, you call Representative Rasheen Aldridge's office and he's taken care of.
We're getting on it.
He's your point man for the state of Missouri.
Can you come
Jane
to the
Dueker, put
county?
your lawyer hat on real quick. They passed a COVID liability law through the Senate about 5 a.m. This week. What did it do? What's it mean to a regular business owner?
Well, it's in some ways it's very complicated, but
Yeah.
overall they made it very, very difficult to sue someone even if they're engaging in reckless behavior. So look, there are businesses that have to be open, and I agree that some shielding is necessary, but it shouldn't encourage reckless behavior.
Put your lawyer hat on. What happened? There was conservatives and Democrats filibustered this bill.
Not to have a lawyer versus lawyer disagreement about this, but I think you've got all the way back from February and March, hospitals and businesses across the state. We have no real contract tracing to be able to
have
say
law firms
where you were
advertising
giving
for
that.
these lawsuits.
And you've got people immediately printing ads saying, if you've got COVID, tell us where you come and help us, we'll sue you. And it's just a windfall to the industry. And I don't see why, when people didn't know what was safe, that they didn't have a path forward, that we should be punishing our healthcare workers, that we should be punishing our hospitals, that we should be punishing our businesses
While
for trying
this
to help. We
bill
have
is-
Good Samaritan laws. Those protect people who are trying to help. We should have Good Samaritan laws here to protect those who are
And I'm
providing
not saying
care to
there
the
shouldn't
community.
be some
Well,
protection.
while this bill is controversial, advertising to me is not. So we're going to bring a couple of to you. We'll be back with the second part of our Opinion Maker panel this week on Missouri Politics. But first, go to showmissouri.com. This week we're in Phelps County, Missouri. Now, we're going to find out if Rolla was named for a hunting dog that couldn't hunt by the folks in Dillon that were jealous about the county seat being there, or did they just misspell Raleigh, North Carolina, in Missouri? Go to showmissouri.com. This is Missouri, one county at a time. We'll be right back after this.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to Week in Missouri Politics. Representative Rasheen Aldridge, City of St. Louis. Thank you for sticking around.
Oh, glad to be here.
Media maven, internet sensation, Jane Dueker, attorney. Mary Elizabeth Coleman from Jefferson County, and Brett Dinkins. Thank you for sticking around. All right, so let's talk about some things the legislature's got teed up for the citizens. They're not safe yet. They got about 4 more months. The next thing they have is they've got a gun bill, right?
Sure.
So this bill says that no state law enforcement officers can enforce any federal gun laws, and if they do, they were going to sue the officer. Now they're going to sue the city. I mean, practically speaking, though, suing the officer, most cops I know aren't rich, and most lawyers I know don't take on cases where they don't have money to collect. Now, cities, they have insurance policies that people collect on all the time. This sounds, I guess I understand what you're trying to say, but boy, this sounds like it's got some unintended consequences.
Yeah, I think as legislation often does, right? But with this particular bill, I think the premise of it is important. I think there are a lot of Missourians who are concerned about protections for their Second Amendment rights. And I think putting things in statute and law to seal those for those citizens is important. And it's something that many representatives were sent there to do, and it's what they campaigned on. I think removing targeting of officers is a smart decision that the legislature came to, and instead focusing on the bodies that are requiring these officers to execute on these different laws.
Jane Dueker, this is not the most House thing of all time.
Kind of.
I mean, it gets attention,
Right.
but if they actually do this, I mean, there's some they have a Safer Streets initiative in the St. Louis City. There was a whole special session about crime in St. Louis City and all these problems. Well, the thing that's working is the federal government's come in, along with the Attorney General, and partnered, and they're actually taking people that probably should be off the streets in their initiative.
And their guns.
Yeah.
So if you look at what's working, I understand this works on Twitter and Facebook, but in real life, isn't this going to hurt the thing they just had a whole special session complaining about?
Well, yeah, and this is what I approach it from. Look, I railed on Democrats when they said they were going to nullify federal law, you know, and now I'm railing on Republicans for doing the same thing. I don't understand coming right out of the box. We're looking to the federal government right now for a lot of things for our citizens, like vaccines and other things. And we're just poking them saying, now we're going to do crazy stuff where we're going to nullify federal gun laws. It's not legal. And you know what? When you raise your hand to take the oath, you say, I'm going to, you know, uphold the United States Constitution. In there is what's called the Supremacy Clause. It still applies, just like when localities here in St. Louis and other places get out of line, the legislature comes in and says you're not going to do it. It's the same thing.
I've watched you sit down with people and earn their respect because I've seen you listen to them. Mm-hmm. I think I know a lot of folks that are ginned up about their guns. I mean, they would support this bill. They would see the post on Facebook and love it. I kind of see what they're trying to do, and I'm sure there is real support for those types of things, but boy, you got to be careful when you're doing stunts, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, we know that on the opposite side, you know, protecting the right to bear arms is going to come down the line. But you know, with this,
sincerely, they sincerely believe it.
And there's a lot of people on our side. I own a gun myself. I get it. You know, it's about being responsible gun owners. But with this one, and legislation does have unintended consequences. But what we just seen from the previous federal government is these federal task force coming in and actually helping reduce the crime in the community. And now we're going to penalize, and as we said on the floor, potentially try to defund some of these police.
They're going to arrest Eric Schmidt for
trying to actually help and reduce the crime in the city. So it was hysterical, honestly, just to look at how they're trying to help police officers, but really make their job harder in the process.
Listen, one of my favorite things that I do as an elected is I get to go into 8th grade civics classes and talk about where power comes from. And the state is the group, it is the body that we have ceded our authority to as citizens, and we give some power up to the federal government, and we give some power down to local public subdivisions, right? We can decide whether or not we want to use taxpayer dollars in Missouri for certain things. And I don't understand why saying we're not going to have the anti-commandeering, we're not going to have you come in and say you have to use state resources. It's not going to get rid of task forces. Just like right now we have anti-forfeiture seizure rules in Missouri that are contrary to federal rules. And what happens is that there's an agreement that says the federal officers are going to do this and the state officers are going to do that, so that we're not worried about Missouri law versus federal law. It's not a supremacy issue. It's about what is Missouri going to do and opt into and what is not. And at the end of the day, as a mother of 6, I'm going to make sure I can protect my family, and people sent me to Jefferson City to make sure that we're passing laws that Missourians want, not what Washington, D.C. wants. It's just not that complicated. And you know, it is really, really fun.
It seems like we just flipped the switch because there's a new administration, and that's. I mean, it's
they
now.
weren't worried.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair. I voted for this the
Yeah,
last 2
this
years.
has been around for a
not
while.
a Republican-Democrat issue, although certainly Biden does want to take away our guns, and so we're going to stand up
Let's talk about
to
an
him.
issue that really isn't a Republican-Democrat issue. There's folks in St. Louis have come down. They want to do some genius schools throughout rural Missouri. They want to take Iron County Blue Jays and they want to put some St. Louis fancy stuff in there. I guess, you know, I get around the state a little bit,
Sure.
right? I last time I was in Pineville, I didn't hear any Mustangs talking about hailing a charter school. What would make a rural Missouri guy vote for something that none of his constituents that knows what it is want?
I think they need to look at the educational opportunities for their children and grandchildren. I was very lucky that I did attend a nice school, South Iron Panthers.
There you go.
I love it, but
Lucky
it
man.
doesn't change the fact that 35 minutes away there are kids graduating with their associate degree, and I didn't have that opportunity.
You ever seen a genius from St. Louis come down 67, make a right there on 74, 72, and go over through the beautiful place where all the TVA projects are right there on the road, and then come down to actually help anybody in rural Missouri?
Well, the
I ain't never
Ursuline
seen it.
Academy was actually in Iron County first. But what I would say is no one's trying to open an ice cream shop in Alaska here. There aren't going to be charter schools in Annapolis, Missouri anytime soon.
You're hoping.
But there are schools, and some of them are in the Boot Hill and elsewhere, where students are not walking out with the English and literature understanding they need to have, with the mathematics understanding they need to have, and they are being handicapped and crippled and forced into a life and a trajectory that is really not based off their skill set as an individual, but rather the situation they were handed. And so making sure that every citizen across the state has the opportunity to have the best education possible, that no student, regardless of their zip code, is being forced into a lifestyle because they didn't get the same opportunities that people in Clayton and Ladue have, is very important and a worthwhile endeavor of the legislator.
You know, I don't know what he's talking about. I went to Neelyville High School. It was a fighting tiger. It wasn't a dungeon. The Ozark Foothills Conference is great, but it's interesting. I hear everybody worried about St. Louis. So they've got these St. Louis charter schools, and they're great. Good for them. Good for St. Louis folks. But I don't know anybody on Porter Wagner Boulevard in West Plains that wants to make it Washington Avenue. And conversely, I doubt anybody on Washington Avenue wants to make it Porter Wagner Boulevard. Why do St. Louis folks seem to just be obsessed, and they're St. Louis Republicans, with forcing everybody into their system?
I mean, I guess they said since it's good for us, it's good for everybody else, right? So let's
I
spread the
guess.
love and make sure everyone. One thing I guess.
Governor Parson doesn't agree, obviously, with the COVID response.
Well, that's true. That's true. We can agree on that. And one thing I guess is a little unpopular, we can actually agree on is, you know, when it comes to charter schools, kids deserve to get the most quality education possible. And I went to Parkway. I had to leave my community to go to, as part of DSEG, to get a better education. I didn't get it from the public schools. We have not supported our public schools like we need to, but we need to make sure that we're not putting politics in play when it's for kids to be able to get the quality education. However, charter schools, if that's what we're going to do, they need to also have the same accountability that other school districts do have.
I rode the old Yellow Dog one way, 45 minutes to Neelyville High School, but it was still the closest school. You've been courted to run statewide. People have been asking you to consider running for auditor. You've been around the state. When you stopped in Ellington, did a whippet come up and say, by God, what we need is a charter school here in Ellington? That's what we need.
You know what? The pandemic has
They probably wanted you to do the Second Amendment thing. I bet you folks in Lawrence County before that. The charter school I wonder about.
No, here's the thing. Parents need to be able to pick what's best for their kids. And the pandemic has shined a light on, we've got neighboring school districts. One is making one choice to go fully virtual. One is making the choice to go fully in person.
In St. Louis.
And around the state too. And so you've got Columbia Public Schools, for example, and they're not going back at all. They're going maybe 2 days a week.
The Donovan-Dons have been in school every day they could.
Well, and you know what? Much to their credit, and they
No
haven't
doubt.
expanded any of the virus. I'm getting hung up here. My point is just to say parents need to be able the ones who pick what education is best for their kids. And I don't think that some politicians who's been saying fund the public schools and you'll get to the right solution for 20, 30 years we've had failing schools. So talk to me about accountability while you've got people in
Where are
parts
the
of the
failing schools
state.
at?
Well, there's quite a few that are in my region as well. They've
You're
got.
in St. Louis. Where are you from?
I'm in Jefferson County.
Yeah, okay. You've been around the state quite a bit as the chief of staff to the governor. I mean, when you were in Palmyra, did any Panthers come up and want a charter school?
No. And I think rural Missouri, they are very proud of their schools and they are very rabid about their schools.
Give me a quick prediction. the rural Republicans? Do they want the pat on the back from a St. Louis Republican in leadership, or do they want to care about their school?
Oh, I think they're going to be
They'll
more
walk the
worried about
plank?
going home. No, I think they
Oh,
worry
really?
about going home.
What do they do? They go St. Louis or do they go rural Missouri?
I think it passes.
They want the pat on the back from the St. Louis
They
Republican?
go home. They stick with their supers.
Go home.
That'd be interesting. Let's talk about police reform, something you've talked about ever since I've known you.
Yeah.
You got a common sense bill. Law enforcement has even stepped up and said, yeah, let's work on this. Brian Williams, yeoman's work. Where's that bill at right now?
A shout out to Senator Brian Williams. He has really, did the hard work, not just this session, but this
Hard
has been work that he started last session.
8 months we've been at it.
Yeah, and he's put everybody at the table. He's had law enforcement at the table. He's had the community at the table to really try to figure out, because when people think criminal justice reform, they think, oh, we're trying to attack police. It's not attacking police. We know that there's a distrust between communities that look like mine and police officers. Even Senator Williams said, he's fearful when he drives down the street.
He's got a story that's really moving.
It's very compelling, but I'm excited. I think that we're going to get some real police reform done. His bill was strong. It was stripped a little bit, but what we got is a good start that we can continue to
Can
grow
this
off
pass
of.
the House?
I think so. You know what? Sheriff Dave Marshak, who's Jefferson County's beloved sheriff,
He really is. I
he
mean,
just is
I mean,
phenomenal.
that's theoretical some places, but he really is loved.
Yeah, and when you talk to him about these types of reforms, he says, you know what? We've been doing this stuff. We need to be doing this stuff. This is about gaining the trust of community.
You've got some friends in the police department.
Yes.
It's going to pass?
Yeah, it should. And I was very proud. Senator Williams came to law enforcement, I represent state of Whoopee, I work with county, city, and he engaged everyone from the ACLU on down. And everybody had a seat at the table. There was no nonsense. It was like, we have to really negotiate. So what he's done is not only gotten a good bill that I think it will pass, should pass, he has developed a conversation network that can be used in the future to even do more work.
Well,
and
our
there's more work to be
conversation
done.
network is unfortunately coming to an end, so I need who won the week and a prediction. Chiefs are favored 3.5.
Yeah.
Who won the week? Give me a Super Bowl prediction.
Well, I got to go back to Senator Brian Williams, won the week. This criminal justice bill is going to be historic for the state of Missouri, and the Chiefs are going to blow it out. I think
Blow it out?
They're going to blow it out at least 15 points.
I say Cardinals win the week. I'm
agree.
sad to see Dexter Smile go, but I have to trust the process. The Cardinals are back. They're making moves. I'm
Yes.
so excited.
Obviously, the Chiefs, they're going to blow it out. And I think that Missourians unborn have won the week. Last year's abortion stats came out. We had only 39 in the state. And we're protecting the unborn and making women
Is
safe.
the system that you put in place with your law working too?
It's working.
Who won the
I'm
week?
going to say Bishop Davison passed his first bill, which happened to be Second Amendment Preservation Act, not
What a
bad
nice
for
guy.
a Republican freshman.
I've got to meet him. He's a really nice person. He seems like a very sincere guy. I'm going to say Robert Odell. You saw once the liberals got done with their nitpicking, the vaccine rollout for the state's working, doing well with the vaccines they have. I think it's going to be interesting to watch the state kind of move forward and move out of this. And like you said, I don't like it either, but back to normal. And I'm going to stick with the governor. Chiefs 35-21. Hope you enjoyed the game tonight, and hope you'll make a point to join us next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.